Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bits of Good Bootcamp. I am Ben, 2 Chili Dogs with Fries Holmes, and in this video we're going to be talking about using CSS to apply styles to the markup that we've been learning about. So up until this point we haven't talked a whole lot about CSS other than it's a style sheet language that you can use to apply styles to the markup that you write. And we've also talked a little bit about specificity, which is just picking a winner whenever you have multiple sets of styles or rule sets that are being applied to the same element. So since we haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty of actually writing those CSS rules and how to color and margin, layout, and style things, in this video we're just going to go over a completed layout that's already styled for you and try to go through some exercises that I have prepared to just deal with CSS specificity conflicts and applying the rule sets that you want to apply. So what we're going to be working with is a CodePen linked down below, which I encourage you to go to and fork so that you can save all the changes onto your own account. And I'm just going to rename this to something of my own to sort of show that. And then in my account, I'll be able to go back to this and see the changes that I've been working on. And then we're going to just run through these guys one by one and apply some styles to this photorealistic recreation of the Varsity menu, which is a very popular diner here for Georgia Tech students in Atlanta. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I know a lot of people are, so tried to recreate that so that we could have something to work with here. So before jumping into our CSS exercises, I wanted to walk through the markup the same way that we did in the last video, just seeing how all of the elements on the page are getting created, what tags are being used, so that we understand what we're working with before applying styles. And then I'm just going to walk through these guys and encourage you to pause the video before I walk through my solutions of each problem, but stick around to hear my explanations of how this problem works and what some best approaches might be. So we're just going to start here. Just looking at the way this is structured, we start with an H1, as you might expect, and since it's an H1, that kind of keys us into, okay, this is styling the header of the page, probably, and here we can see a class of red around our C, and then Elastic, and then C Ombos. That's probably applying to this classic combos header right here. We're applying a span that's only with its sole purpose of making that C turn red instead of black. And that's what we normally use spans for, is just styling specific parts of text in a document and letting everything style in line. And then we have our two images on either side with some alt text to sort of explain what that image actually is. Great for screen readers, great for readability of the HTML that we're looking at. In this case, the combo meal, which is this guy right here, and the one over here. Below that, we have our section, which is a combo banner. And if we look at the text here, we can figure out where that is. Includes regular soft drink, this text here, large soft drink, this guy here, and so forth. And then our last section, which has a div in order to contain the elements inside of it, has no semantic meaning. It's just a div in order to apply some styles. And inside we have our third paragraph and a special deals star, which is just this guy with a star background and the price next to it. Another paragraph element. And that's the end of our section. And we have what's called a definition list, or a DL. And this is something that I haven't gone over, but it's very similar to the unordered list that we've been working with list items inside of that. But in this case, it allows you to specify a title and a description for each list item instead of just having an LI. And this can be useful when you have basically just a list of items where everything has a header and a subheader. And in this case, we have a pretty similar situation where we have our title, or DT, which is just the menu item title, the 2 chili dogs, and then a description for that item, which is the price of it. So $6.99, we can see that right here. And that's inside the definition title. Definition description. So this is just like an augmented, unordered list that we've already been working with. And as you can see, you can put as many divs as you want in order to style it. In this case, we have a div of menu items surrounding it to apply that sort of box shadow, white background thing. Then we have an image for our item, and then title description, all the way down, all 6 of our items until the end of the list, structured the same way. And then at the bottom here, I just put a comment for you guys to ignore this. This is just the Varsity logo that's being positioned at the top right. We're not going to be working with that. It's styled in a way that's kind of just allows it to always be at the top right of the page, so it always stays out of the way. So we'll just ignore that for these exercises, but know that it's there in the markup. So that's a quick walkthrough. We're just going to jump right into the exercises here. I encourage you to just listen to the way that I would solve the first one and the second one to sort of get an idea of how to work with this CSS document that we have here. And then for the future ones, I encourage you to pause the video, try it yourself, and then come back in order to see how I may have solved it. So starting with the first one here, we want to do something pretty simple, change the text of the second item in the combo banner, and make 20 cents more appear red without writing new CSS. So since we walked through the markup, we were already able to see that there is a way to change the text color to red, which I hovered my mouse over, but pretend I didn't do that if you want to try yourself. But it's pretty simple here. All we want to do is change the text first. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this text directly and put it inside of second item in the combo banner. So probably referring to this guy, which if we go to our markup is this item right here. I'm going to overwrite that with this one, extra 20 cents more. We should see that update immediately. Thanks to CodePen, just live reloads whenever you change something. And then we want to make 20 cents more red. So the way to do that is just use the class that we already have, our span with the class of red. And we're just going to throw that on there, close tag, and now we should see our red being applied. So pretty simple, just using classes that already exist. Always try to get an idea from the markup and also our CSS to know everything that's available to us so we don't rewrite styles twice. So our second exercise is to create a CSS class called large image and paste the following rule set. Okay, so just put this in directly, and we want our class to be large image. And we want to apply this to the first and third menu item so that the icon can be larger. But be careful on this one. You'll notice in a minute if you try to take the regular approach, what ends up happening where you have to change something in the sake of specificity. That's all I'll really say about that. So I'm just going to scroll to where those styles in the menu item are getting applied so I can see what's already going on inside of our CSS document and put our related style near it. Okay, so we see this here. We're applying to all the images that are a direct sibling of menu items, so something that's one level deep inside of that. And we want to apply a width and a height of 60 to that image. So in terms of specificity, we're saying class name and a tag inside of that class name. And then we want to apply our large image class to sort of overwrite this width and height to make it bigger. So I'm just going to do as instructed. I'm going to create a class of large image, paste the rule set, and now we have that guy ready to go. And as you might expect, I'm going to apply the class of large image to, first and third. So we'll just apply to the first one. And we're going to say class of large image. And that style actually does not get applied. And there's a reason for this. If we're looking at what wins out in the specificity argument, here we're saying apply to anything with this class, these styles. And here we're saying apply anything that is this specific tag inside of this specific class, a width and a height of 60. And just looking at what's going to trump what, here we're saying tag inside of class name, and here we're just saying class name. So in this case, a tag inside of class name is going to be more specific than just saying a class name. So in order to overwrite this, we have to come up with something that's more specific than that. And the way to do that, and this is something I encourage you to do just instinctually, if you know that you're applying a style to just menu items and you want it to be larger, always try to say, okay, well, I want to apply to menu item, and then I want to apply to all the large images inside of that. And in this case, since we're saying class name inside of class name, instead of tag inside of class name, this is going to be more specific, since large image, a class, is more specific than just the tag. Which is the basic hierarchy that we've already talked about, where tag, less specific than class, less specific than ID. So in the end, that's the style that gets applied. So it's a little tricky, definitely something to look out for. And in the future, if you want to apply, if you want just this large image to be global and apply to things that aren't just menu items, there are other ways to do that in order to win out in specificity. I believe if you do image, large image, that'll be more specific since we're saying tag class name. And here we're saying tag inside of class name. So this would also work since we're also being specific about where this class is being applied. But there are many solutions to this. But for now, since we know that it's going to be all the menu item images, this is the easiest to read and understand how the override's working. So now we're going to move on. At this point, I'm hoping you're getting a little more comfortable with how this is working. Now we're going to remove the right margin on the first item in the banner. In this case, we just applied this exact rule to the first item, and then a little challenge below that, which I'll get to in a minute. But we're going to start by just doing the basic approach you would think, throw a class name on it, apply that margin. So we're going to jump over to how the combo banner is working inside of our CSS. If we scroll up here, we can say, okay, here's our combo banner styles, and here's how we style the children of that. We're saying combo banner, all the paragraphs and all the divs, we want to have this width and height, and then these margins applied. Okay, so it looks like we're going to be overriding a style again in much the same way that we did previously. So we want to apply this to just the first item. So if we jump over here, we're going to go ahead and apply a class of no margin right. Just make it very clear exactly what we're applying. And you should notice that this is definitely mirroring the exact problem that we just did, where we are specifying a class, and here specifying a tag inside of a class, so that's more specific. So the solution is going to be equally similar. We're just going to say parent and class name, and then we should see this margin that was between the first and second one disappear. So just a reminder of exactly how specificity works when you have this caret symbol to say parent to child. And now we're going to jump into this little challenge section. Pause the video to research this on your own and try to figure out how to solve it. But here we're going to try completing using inf of type. So I didn't say exactly how to use this in context, and that's because I wanted you guys to go off and research this and figure out how it works. So I already had this Googled. I'm going to pretend that wasn't there. And I'm just going to Google this the way I would any rule in CSS that I'm not sure about. In this case, I'm just going to Google CSS inf of type. And from the results, I always recommend looking at anything from W3 Schools is going to have great explanations and interactive examples to see how it works in the wild. MDN, another great resource, which is it's a little harder to read. It reads more like documentation. So if you're a beginner, it can be a little overwhelming, but it's another really thorough resource. And then CSS tricks articles are also super nice as well, but you're not going to get CSS tricks articles for every rule. So in the end, I would say always go for the W3 Schools link. It's just going to be the most useful to you. And here we can see an example, as I would have predicted, where it tells you exactly how to use it and then a way to try it for yourself. So I'm just going to click into that right away, see how it's working. So in this case, it's applying this inf of type style. And we can see here it's using this colon syntax in order to say, okay, a paragraph, inf of type, and then a number. In this case, we're saying this is the number paragraph that I want to apply a style to. In this case, we want to say the second paragraph, or the second item with a type of paragraph, is going to have a background of red. And if we look at our markup right here, if we look at all the paragraphs inside this container, we would expect the second one to be red, and that's exactly what we get over here. So one thing of note is that this is applying to basically every paragraph inside of a container, every second paragraph we want to be red. So that would mean that if we had like something else inside of here, like I can actually edit this markup myself in order to try it out, which is convenient. So if I were to have just a collection of paragraphs inside this div, we could expect the inf of type to be applied much the same way. And then we hit run in order to see that. Yeah, so we see our second element inside the div gets styled with that, and our second item inside the body gets styled with that. So if we were to do something like, say, just the body, then we would see that disappear, because now we're saying we just want the second paragraph inside the body to have a background of red. So little run through of int of type. You're not going to use it a ton, but in this case, it's actually pretty useful because it's much more specific about, since we know we're just styling the first element, and that's all we want to do, just saying in our CSS, I want to style the first element is a little bit clearer. So we just jump over here. We can replace this class that we're using, and I'll delete the class that's totally obvious. We can replace that with a paragraph with an int of type second paragraph. Actually, no. Sorry. What are we applying? The first paragraph. We want to say 0. And now we should see our margin completely disappear between these two guys in much the same way we did before. We were just applying it to the first paragraph inside the combo banner. So that's a nice use case for it. Just keep that in your back pocket, and also always look at W3 School's great resource if you're ever confused. So now we're jumping into some word problems. Oh, look at that. It's like back in grade school. You gotta have some practical applications. So a little backstory here. Varsity wants to run some specials on underselling items. And in order to make them prominent, we want to change the background of the menu item to yellow, so this white panel here. And we want to make the text red, but leave the price black. Okay. So from our markup walkthrough, we should know that the text is going to be the definition title. And we know that the price black, okay, so the price is a definition description. So we want to leave the description black and the rest of the text to be red. Okay, so yeah, it'll be ugly, oh well. Always obey the designer, you know. Push back if you're ever confused, but always obey the designer. And right now we're going to run specials on the classic hamburger and classic dog. So we want to apply these styles to classic hamburger and dog, so second and fifth item. And we could use int of type again, but I'm just going to use classes since special is going to be a reusable style that we want to apply to everything. All right, so we're going to jump back in here. So the first thing that I want to do is apply my background of yellow to just the special menu items. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and first add my rule set right here. So I'm actually going to, just for the sake of certainty, instead of creating a class that's just .special, I'm going to go ahead and say I want anything that is a special menu item. So specifically, both of these classes applied. So I'm certain that it'll override the background color that's being used in the regular menu item style. Sorry, in this case, just a regular background that, in this case, is white. That's just a RGB value to specify it. But here we go. I'm going to go ahead and add my background of yellow right here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that class to the specific special that I want to apply it to. In this case, the classic hamburger is one of them. I'm going to go ahead and put a space here and put a second style or a second class in there. And we can already see that show up right at the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and add that to the fifth item as well as specified. And, oh, there we go. Okay, it took a minute to rerun. So now we should see our background of yellow being applied. That's great. And the second thing we want to do is set the text to red, but not the description, not the price. So I'm going to go ahead and use the same menu item special, and I'm going to just style the title and turn it into a color of red. And bam, look at that. We already see our title is the correct color, and then our background is the correct color. Another way you could have done this is you can actually take advantage of how the cascade is working, where if you're familiar with the color rule, you would see that this rule actually applies to the parent and then all of the children all the way down the tree unless a child tries to overwrite that style. So in this case, if I say background of red here, it'll apply to all of the text inside of that container. In this case, it's applying to both the price and the title. And if we want to override that, we can go ahead and say specifically just the definition description, I want to set back to black. So this is another way of doing it. It's a little more roundabout because I have to override what the parent's telling me for just the price, but it works just as well. We get the same result. So just do either or. It really depends on context to know what works best. All right, next word problem. That change did not go over well with investors. That's not good. Well, it's pretty ugly, so I'm not super surprised. So it looks like they're excluding some combos from budget cuts, and for now we want to set them to no longer display. Okay, so we see at the bottom we have to do some research on the display property in order to get this working. And we want to hide the chili dogs and chicken sandwich right here, so the first and fourth item. Okay, so we're going to go back on our little research excursion, just like we did with int of type. I'm going to go ahead and search CSS, and then you'll see I've already done a few rehearsals before. We can go ahead and CSS display, and right at the top, once again, a W3 schools result. It'll almost always be at the top, which is very convenient. And jumping right in here, we see again an example of how it's used and some of the ways that we can set the display. In this case, it's showing us none, inline block, and just regular block. And you may be thinking right away, okay, none. That probably means that there's no display applied, so it might hide it. I'm not certain. I'm going to hit try for yourself and see what we get. And we can see right here, it's applying those styles inside a style tag right here. This is another way to apply CSS, by the way, style tag inside your HTML. We can see it's applying display none, inline, block, and all of these to the first example, second, third. All right, so where is example one? Well, a paragraph with example one. We can see that right here, this hello world has a display of none. And if we go to the result that's over here, we can see under this display none header, hello world doesn't display. Okay, so that kind of confirms our hunch that display none probably hides the element. And you also notice that it doesn't leave a gap where hello world once was. It's not like making it invisible. It's literally just ripping it out of the paragraph that we already have here. So that sounds exactly like what we want. So if we head back over here, we're going to go ahead and do the same approach that we did with special, where we're going to say menu item that is, we'll just say hidden, and then we're going to throw on our display none that we just looked at, and we're going to see what that does. So I'm going to go up to the first item here that should be hidden, and we should see this guy, yeah, completely disappear from the list. So now we just have 5 items instead of 6, and it's like it never existed at all. And then we can go ahead and do the same thing for our chicken sandwich. Where's this guy? Right here. And if we put that hidden style on it, we should now see we have 4 items. So, all right, that's cool. Display none just completely removes it from the DOM. And I'm going to go ahead and show you another way to hide things without actually having it like completely disappear and not leave a gap at all. One option that you have is just getting rid of the opacity. When opacity is basically just like how bright or transparent something is. So like if I did 0.5, it's on a scale from 0 to 1, by the way. If I did 0.5, you can see it's like very faded but still there. If I were to do opacity 0, it's the same effect of display none, but it still technically exists. It's just it has no color. It's transparent. So if you ever need the gap to remain there, or if you want to like animate things in and out with a fade animation, you would use opacity in order to set that. But in this case, we want it to act like it never existed at all, so I'm going to use display, and I'm going to hide that. All right, so number 5 done. We should only have, 2 more here. So another word problem, corporate on damage control. They want to add a combo of the month to see what happens. So what does that mean? Well, a combo of the month has a red background and white text for both the name and price. Okay, so we don't need to do any weird overrides. We know all of the text inside combo of the month should be white. There should only be 1 of these at a given time and should be easily accessible from JavaScript. Okay. So, all right, and we want to set that on the classic hamburger right here. Okay, so if you were looking closely at some of the explanations that I gave in the write-up, you may have noticed a certain specifier that you can use that's easy to reference from JavaScript and should only be used on 1 element on the page. You can't have 2 elements with this same specifier. And that specifier is actually going to be an ID. So rather than using a class for this one, we're actually going to use an ID with combo of the month. And once we get to talking about JavaScript, it'll make more sense why IDs are useful. But for now, we're just going to use it for our styles here of the month. And I'm going to go ahead and add that in. Once again, same syntax, menu item, and then combo of month. And we need to use this little pound symbol or hashtag in order to apply an ID instead of a class. And we're going to set the background to red. And we should see that style get applied because, remember, an ID always trumps a class. So in this case, we say we want a class of a class. In this case, we want an ID of a class. So this is actually going to be more specific than just a class of a class. So it's going to override that background yellow with a background of red, even though special is still being applied as a class. And we're also going to say that we want the color to be white. And we should see that getting applied here, but we're actually we still have this override that we're doing where we say just for the definition description on a special, we want the color to be black. So, I mean, the cleanest way to do this, even though we're now getting a little messy with our styles right now, in my opinion, we can go ahead and make sure that also the definition description gets applied that. Or we could say that we want all the text to have a color of white, and that'll just make sure it overrides on all children. That's what the asterisks mean. Literally anything inside of this container should now have a color of white, and then this should have a background of red. So that's probably the cleanest way that I would do the override here. And once again, since we're doing ID class on a tag, that's going to be more specific than class of a class on a tag. So yeah, once again, this is getting a little hairy. I would probably use a class that says combo of the month, and then not apply styles to the ID, because usually IDs are what you use to reference from JavaScript some element on your page. You usually don't use it inside of your CSS markup. Well, some people do, but I prefer not to. So use your best judgment on what makes the most sense, or if you're having to do too many overrides to get the style you want. But this should work fine for now for what we're using it for. Okay, so minor adjustment. If an item is a special and a combo of the month, which this classic hamburger is, as we have just noticed, it should still use the yellow background and red text. Make this fix and use a yellow background. Okay, without removing its combo of the month identifier. Okay, so this ID has to stay put, and we still have to override back in order to get our yellow and red, as we had previously. So one option, of course, is what I had already mentioned, where you could have the ID completely separate from the styles, and we could just have like a menu item dot combo of the month and have that be a class. And then we could use some overrides to make sure, like, if a menu item that's combo of the month and a special, it should still have that background yellow applied. But we're going to go ahead and leave in our IDs in here, just add a little bit more challenge. And I'm going to go ahead and say menu item that is a combo of the month. That's a really long identifier. That is also a special. We should go ahead and leave that background yellow. Oh, sorry. I left in this tag, didn't I? Okay, so now we should see that background yellow getting applied. And one way that we can make this a little bit cleaner so we don't have to repeat ourselves with background yellow, we could go back up to this item special and use commas, which basically says that I want to apply this rule set to this specifier and apply it to this specifier. And I'll use an enter key to make that a little clearer. So I want to apply this rule set to both of these, and I don't want anything else to change. Now, we still have this stuff going on, where, well, the background red's being overwritten, but now we're saying anything that's a combo of the month and all the children should have a color of white. And that's kind of annoying. We don't really want that. So the best way to do that, first of all, would probably be to just mirror the way that we're doing it here, where we want it to be menu item special, all of them. Well, no. We want that, and then we want this whole thing, just this guy. We want that to work. And then I would probably go ahead and rewrite this style, actually, because it's causing some conflicts that we don't really want. I would probably push color white to the top here and let that cascade down. And then I would go ahead and, well, actually, no, that's it. That should work fine. And we may have to do some overrides in order to make sure that works. But, all right, we should see right here. I'm going to apply an enter key here. Now that we've applied these overrides to say, okay, if it's a special, or if it's a special that's a combo of the month, we want to do this. And same case for this, we want to have that black override in order to make it look nice. And then things that are just combo of the month should have background red, color white. Okay, so great. This is this is the end of the problem set. This was meant to be the most challenging one because you have to use a lot of separate specifiers to make sure you don't get any conflicts and you overwrite exactly what you want to overwrite. And as you can see, it can get kind of hairy. It can get kind of tricky when you have a lot of things that are conflicting. So that's why I would say just be as specific as possible whenever you're writing styles so then you won't run into collisions. Like instead of using .special, it's really nice to use any menu item that's a special. So then you're dead certain that you'll only be applying these styles to items that are a menu item that is special. And that style is definitely going to override what's already being used because it's super specific. It's a class name of a class name. And here it's an ID on a class name of a class name. So that's ultra specific, and we know that override is going to work as well. And then also just be careful about how many overrides you have to do on a given element. Like in this case, we had both a special having its own styles and a combo of the month having its own styles. And in those cases, you have to sort of weigh out, well, what functionality are these specifiers serving? What's the point of them? In this case, combo of the month is just supposed to be, for JavaScript, it's easy to reference the combo of the month and grab it. So in this case, it would probably be nice to say, like, applying a combo of the month class. And if it's a special, we would just remove that class entirely from the element. So that way, if it's a special, we don't apply that combo of the month class. But if it's not a special, we do apply that combo of the month class. So it's like a either or. But the combo of the month ID can always stay. That's one way that I would do it. Just making sure that you don't have to overwork yourself in your style sheets. But that's all I wanted to go over today. Just some examples of how to target elements in your HTML and apply styles to them. And in the next video, we're going to jump into actually how to write those styles. We're going to start with layouts, so how to actually position things on the page, like how I've positioned everything in a grid layout here. And then later on, we're going to jump into more complex layouts with Flexbox. So that'll be pretty exciting. Hope to see you guys in the next one.